What's up, everybody? In this video, I'm going to discuss how and why the Federal Bureau of Prisons has to be the most garbage law enforcement agency in the entire United States of America. I told myself I wasn't going to really do this or talk about it, but I'm like, you know what? I have to. I'm going to use these next few slides to show how corrupt, how misguided, and just how trash of an agency the Bureau is. Y'all see this gentleman in this video or in this picture? This guy, his name is Joshua J. Smith. He is the second in command for the entire Bureau of Prisons, the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Now, could you imagine for the LA Sheriff's Department if their second in command was a convicted felon? Could you imagine, let's say, LAPD? Now, I know some of these agencies, they do have some gangbangers and some criminals, but they've never been caught, they've never been adjudicated, etc. But in this situation, this guy actually did time in the Federal Bureau of Prisons for drug related convictions. And now he is second in command. I can't think of any agency, whether it be city, state, county, feds, whatever. I can't think of any law enforcement agency that has ever hired a convicted felon to be the number two in command. Now, I have not done my research, so I can't say for certain, but this right here takes the cake. And you want to know why the Bureau of Prisons, why they have so many disgruntled employees, or why so many people quit, or why it's so hard for them to keep employees? It's making stupid decisions like this. Now, I do have to state the obvious that privilege is absolutely playing a role in this because I couldn't see a brother being in a position like this or a sister being in a position like this to where they could be a convicted felon and then all of a sudden they can become number two in the command system for an entire federal law enforcement agency. Now, I cannot independently confirm this, but it says that Smith was convicted of 10 felonies by age 16 and served time in the federal prison on drug charges. Now, the drug charges, he did do his time. Now, as far as committing 10 felonies prior to age 16, I cannot independently verify that, but that's what this says. Now, I'm not inside of this dude's head, but I could imagine that there are officers that supervised him that are probably still employed, or I'm sure they are still employed. And I'm sure this dude has a personal hit list for the different people that may have made him feel bad or people that could have legitimately mistreated him. Now, I've never seen this, at least in my time in law enforcement. I have almost 20 years. I was recently fired from the Bureau, whistleblower retaliation. We have an ongoing case, so I can't really speak about that. But even with this, I can't think of any time where a felon was able to be number two in command for a federal law enforcement agency or for any law enforcement agency in the country. Now, here goes an official statement from the Federal Bureau of Prisons, which is a garbage federal law enforcement agency. It says what it says. You can read it right here. And then here's a quote from this guy who was second in command. Together, we can make prisons a place of transformation. That's our job and that's our mission. And I couldn't be more honored to join you on it. Let's get to work. Joshua A. Smith, Deputy Director, blah, 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 and also a former inmate from the federal prison. Now, again, I want to make this clear. I am not trying to shame anybody that has done time anywhere, right? If you do your time and you pay your debt to society, you should be able to re-enter society and do your thing. But in my opinion, when it comes to positions like this, I don't think it should be, right? And I might get some blowback on this, but we already have enough corrupt leadership, right? We have plenty of, well, I should say not we, because I ain't there no more, but the Federal Bureau of Prisons has plenty of corrupt wardens, regional directors, all of that stuff where they will lie. And when I say this, I really mean it. They will lie on official government documents. They will lie under investigations. They will get caught up in some serious allegations that are sustained, but nothing happens to them. They call it the F up, move up program, right? I'll let you figure that out. But, it's one thing to know or to have a reasonable understanding that you're dealing with a coworker or a fellow officer that, they're no good, but they just haven't been caught or they haven't been fired or arrested. But then when you're dealing with somebody that actually did time, that takes things to another level. Now, when it comes to, working in a prison environment or just law enforcement, right? It's already hard enough trying to trust officers because you don't know if they're clean, you don't know if they're dirty, you don't know if they're giving up information on other officers and all that kind of stuff, right? So you already have that tension there. But just imagine, right, that you have this felon, right? Nobody can examine his heart and examine his mind except for God, right? We don't have that ability. But I don't know, man. This is crazy. This is crazy. And I'll say this, right? This might be a pro officer video and it is what it is, right? But just think, right? What are the officers going through when they know that this person that is second in command could have been the same person that they supervised at one time? Now, on the inmates' argument, they can say, oh, well, good. It's about time. Now he can do retribution or he can give his payback in his own ways. And I get that, right? But I'm not doing this video from the perspective of an inmate or a former inmate. I'm just talking about a former officer. Now, the Bureau of Prisons is already known for being like the worst federal government job to have in the country. And they've earned that title over the last several years. Now, as I previously stated, they've earned that title over the last several years. Now, here you go. You can see the leadership for the Bureau of Prisons. You have William K. Marshall III, who was, the shot caller. He has the keys to the National Yard. And then here it is. You got the number two in command for a law enforcement agency is a convicted felon. Now, I do want to go back a little bit just to talk about the privilege factor, because I don't want to glaze over that, because that also is a huge problem. Now, again, I couldn't imagine NYPD, Chicago PD, Oakland PD, or any other type of major departments or any departments. I couldn't imagine that they would hire a convicted felon that did time in their system or was arrested by their agency and did time, and now they're number two in command. I just I can't think of it. Now, I know some people again, they're going to be like, well, maybe this is good because we need to have, a different set of eyes or we need to have, a fresh vision. And I get that. And in those situations where you want to have people that were formerly incarcerated or just as involved, try to help make things better, I'm all for that. But in my opinion, it should be in the capacity of an advisor. They should not be in any type of leadership role, because here's how it works, right? When you're an officer and it's found out that you're a dirty officer, even if you haven't been placed under investigation yet, or even if it seems like, SIA or whatever is covering it up to help out that officer or officers because they're homies or whatever, even in that situation, once you find out an officer is dirty or you believe they're dirty, based on, real legitimate stuff and not just rumors, people won't trust you. They won't want to work with you, things of that nature. Now, again, that's why I say, because there's rumors all the time about people being dirty, this, that, and the other. But there's real trust issues in the law enforcement world, especially in the prison system, when somebody turns, and when they turn, they can't come back, right? When you become a dirty officer, generally speaking, and you're found out and you go through the due process and all that, when you're terminated or arrested and sent to prison, you cannot come back, right? I've known several, and some of them hurt. Some of them hurt where we had some dirty officers. Some of them was a complete surprise. But once they get arrested, convicted, and sent to prison, they cannot come back to the side of law enforcement, because there's just, once you break that veil, that's it. But when it comes to this, right, it's like the flip. You were a convicted felon, you did your time, this, that, and the other. Now, if you want to try to make the Bureau of Prisons a better place, I'm all for that. But it should be done in a capacity like an advisory committee or some type of liaison or something like a middleman, but you should never be in charge of other law enforcement officers. But this just speaks to just how garbage of an agency the Bureau of Prisons really is. All right, so now we move on to this slide. I'm not going to hold you guys too long, but here you can see that Smith was convicted in the late 1990s on drug conspiracy charges and sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. He was pardoned in 2021 by Donald Trump. And then you can see the current director, Marshall III, a former West Virginia corrections leader, appointed by Trump in April, made the announcement in a memo to staff calling Smith's appointment unprecedented. Now, I don't know if that was subliminal shade that he was throwing or not, but again, this is crazy. Now, shout out to Hector Bravo with that prison guard, right? He does a lot about exposing the corruption within the CDCR. Now, I'm not going to go on that type of campaign, and because to be quite honest with you, I have a lot of great stuff going on. The family and I, we making money. I mean, we're doing great, but I do feel like like people like Hector Bravo should get more exposure. They should get more limelight because they talk about the corruption. And I'm telling you, man, when it comes to the Bureau of Prisons, the leadership, generally speaking, is terrible. And I often give this example, right? Because even with this situation, right, even with just government work, it's like whenever you're brainstorming and you're trying to come up with some type of a plan to, I don't know, to execute whatever it might be. So you can say, hey, let's sit down and let's brainstorm and come up with a good idea. So the way it usually works, how I say is they'll come up with the best idea. I mean, it's magnificent, it's on point, it covers all the pertinent bases. But once they say, okay, we have this great plan, what management will do is they'll say, all right, now let's do the exact opposite. And that's what they do with this, right? Who in their right mind would think that it's okay? Now, I know he was appointed by Trump or whatever, and that's a whole different ball game because since he's a 34-time convicted felon, I guess he doesn't see a problem with hiring another fellow, convicted felon. But anyways, it's this is like, man, I'm so glad I'm not there anymore. I got an active case going on, so I can't speak to that right now. But you best believe, later on I will. But this is just another example of how garbage the Bureau of Prisons is. I mean, could you imagine the morale with the officers at the different prisons? Now, I'll say this because I'm not, I'm gonna call a spade a spade. Now, the Bureau of Prisons, they do have officers that want to do the right thing. They just want to do their job, do their eight, hit the gate, go home, and enjoy the family, right? But then you do have unchecked different clicks and things where they just do the wrong thing all the time and they're never held accountable. And that's one of the biggest problems with the Bureau of Prisons is they never truly hold leadership accountable. And there's been numerous investigations that have been completed by either OIG, which is the Office of Inspector General. There's been some Senate Judiciary Committee investigations where they determine, when management engages in misconduct or when they break the law, they're never truly punished. They're never usually held accountable. Generally speaking, it's the F up to move up, right? That's how it works. You always hear different people. They might be on the union side or they could be former employees that talk about corruption in the Bureau of Prisons. But whenever you might hear things like cronyism and nepotism, things of that nature. But there's just no way in the world that it should be acceptable to have a person that is, or that was, they did time in the federal prison, they're a convicted felon, they did their time, that's cool. But there's certain things that you just should not be able to get involved in, right? Let's just say, I don't even know if Sandusky is still alive. We all know the deplorable things that he did at Penn State. That would be like saying, you know what? If Sandusky did all of his time, if he's still alive, I have no idea. But he paid his debt to society, so now we're going to make him the chairman of the Boys and Girls Club. I mean, that's crazy. You did your time, no matter how gross it was, or no matter how immoral it was. He did his time, so now he should be able to do whatever he wants. And that's just not how it should be. but that's how things work in the Federal Bureau of Prisons. They don't care about trying to do what's right. They don't care about what the perception might be. They're going to do what they do. So, on one hand, I get it, right? Some people are going to say, on the inmate side, and I understand it. Oh, well, it's about time. We need to have somebody that used to be like us to understand, to, try to help us, this, that, and the other. And I get that. But again, I say, in my opinion, it should be more in an advisory role. It should not be as you're an employee. And now here's the thing. Now, I cannot confirm this. Now, um, because he never worked. Okay, I won't get into all that, but generally speaking, right, when you work for the Federal Bureau of Prisons, there are certain things that could come into play, but generally speaking, everybody is considered correctional officers first, and you would receive the law enforcement badge, law enforcement retirement, things of that nature. Now, when it comes to him and his unique set of circumstances, I don't know how that works. Now I know, okay, I won't get into that either, but I just can't believe it, man. But on one hand, I can't believe it, but then on the other hand, I can believe it because the Bureau, it is one of the most trashiest and most unprofessional um, government agencies that I have ever worked for or even known about in my life. Now, I'm sure Hector Bravo, with that prison guard, he might have a different opinion on it. And, that's cool because CDCR is definitely they definitely have their problems, you know what I'm saying? But when it comes to the feds, right? The feds, have facilities all over the country, right? So just, with let's say all the corruption that goes on in the state prison in California, all of that is centralized and contained within the state of California. But just imagine when you have the corruption and the malfeasance and all of that other stuff that's just nationwide. So I'm gonna do some more videos. As I've said in a post that I've made, things are going really good for us. I mean, we're making money. We're doing great. So I'm at the point now I don't have to just grind and do these YouTube videos with the hopes that I can make money. And I don't need to rely on YouTube. I have a lot of great stuff going on that I will talk about down the road. But until the next one, holla at your boy.